Morning, even afternoon, we got a banger for y'all today, baby. What we got for you is a video from T-Dog. Got his links in the description. Be sure to check him out, man. This is him talking about Call of Duties that we never knew existed. There's a handful of games here I had no idea that Call of Duty made. I'm not trolling. And being someone that's older that grew up with Call of Duty, I thought I would know them all. I hope you enjoyed this, man. If you do, hit the like, hit the sub. Most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them. I'll catch you in the next one.
Call of Duty's been around for over 20 years, making it one of the largest video game franchises of all time. Considering it's been a hit year after year and it's basically a permanent home at the top of the sales charts since COD 4, you'd think we'd know every single Call of Duty game and what it had to offer. But that's where you're wrong. Today, I've compiled a handful of Call of Duty titles that you completely forgot existed, or better yet, you probably didn't even know existed, especially the last two. Let's dive in. Call of Duty for the N-Gage. One thing that you don't often think about is just how powerful a piece of hardware modern mobile phones are. Think about it. The phone in your pocket, or the one you're watching this video on, can run a fully built out Call of Duty title and Warzone all on the go. And despite not being the most convenient way to play, it does let you take your Call of Duty grind anywhere, as long as you have a charger and don't mind your phone getting a bit hot. But now, rewind to the early 2000s, where people couldn't even fathom the technology we have today until a certain company began attempting to merge the cell phone with a handheld gaming experience. And that company was Nokia. And they saw the
who here had one of those like Nokia phones that were like indestructible, bro? I had one.
Success that Nintendo was having with their Game Boy line of systems. So with dollar signs in their eyes, the execs over at Nokia HQ asked, what if we just merged our cell phone with a gaming console? And poof, the N-Gage was born.
What?
Finally,
I've never even heard about
clunky, unwieldy device that you could use both as a mediocre cell phone and a mediocre gaming device. Unsurprisingly though, this thing flopped hard, and it was discontinued after only 3 years with an estimated 2 million units sold and only 56 games made for it in the North American market. This brings us to COD, because one of those 56 titles happened to be a port of the original Call of Duty.
I need y'all to understand something, bro. If you're younger watching this, man, you like our graphics back in the day, like that was it. You know what I'm saying? Compared to what we got now.
It's rough around the edges, as you can see, but the fact that they managed to make a full-blown console game run on this little phone is honestly impressive for the time. It's more of a novelty than a game to take seriously and play all the way through, but for a 2003 game on the go, I was honestly kind of impressed. I know you're looking at the title below me and thinking Nintendo is probably the most family-friendly gaming company ever created. They wouldn't put something like COD on their consoles. You're lying to me. Well, do you believe me now? That's right. There were a staggering 14 different Call of Duty games developed across the GameCube, DS, Wii, and Wii U. Honestly, the fact that we haven't seen any since the Switch's release is wild, especially with something like Call of Duty Mobile on the market. For the GameCube, they developed Call of Duty Finest Hour and Call of Duty Big Red 1, which are just slimmed down ports of COD 1 and COD 2 that were also released for the PS2 and original Xbox.
I gotta say, GameCube
the only
graphics
difference between those and the GameCube ports,
I couldn't believe what I was looking at, bro.
The lack of online multiplayer because the system just wasn't built for it. Then the Wii saw the release of the classics COD 3, World at War, Black Ops, Modern Warfare 3, and everyone's favorite, Call of Duty Reflex. Wait, what was that last one? See, Call of Duty Reflex is simply a COD 4 port, but it was actually released the same year as MW2, with the Nintendo devs just skipping that game entirely. Honestly, the Call of Duties on the Wii aren't the worst. They're lower in quality, sure, but you use the Wii remote and a nunchuck to aim, and if the sensor is working properly, it almost feels like a keyboard and mouse. It was kind of crazy. As for the Wii U, we received Black Ops 2 and Ghost. These were the same games as their Xbox and PlayStation counterparts, and are arguably the definitive additions for local players 1v1s. One player could play on the gamepad, while the other could play on the TV, meaning each player had their own screen rather than cutting one in half. Now, I've left the DS out of this conversation thus far, but why is that? Well, unlike the other Nintendo releases, each DS game had its own unique take on the console counterpart due to the DS being miles
he was
behind
actually
the
right.
stationary
I don't know
console
hardly
on the
any of
market.
these.
Sound familiar?
I thought I did.
So they hired a company called N-Space to develop 5 original titles for the system. Oh, good. Who's better to make a Call of Duty for the DS than the team that made... Oh, yeah, we're doomed. Each of these DS games had its own stories set in similar universes as the mainline games. In order, we have Call of Duty 4, Call of Duty World at War, Call of Duty Modern Warfare Mobilized, Call of Duty Black Ops, and Modern Warfare 3 Defiance. Man, they really love skipping MW2. In-game, you control the movement with the bottom screen.
Look at how bad this looks.
The DS only had a D-pad. And while not great, it's a fun way to play Call of Duty on the go. The games also get progressively better as you play them in release order and eventually find a way to function without the touchpad. Black Ops 1, coming in clutch again. Continuing the trend of Call of Duty games on the go is Call of Duty 2 for flip phones from back in the day.
What?
Rather than being a first-person shooter, this game was actually a top-down game where you dodge enemies as you try to reach the end of the map. It's vaguely inspired by Call of Duty 2 while being its own thing. And honestly, without it, we may not be where we are now with the Call of Duty mobile space. So, I'm thankful for this bad game. Speaking of bad mobile games, allow me to introduce Call of Duty Heroes. Call of Duty Heroes was a free-to-play, real-time strategy game developed.
There was a RTS Call of Duty. Okay, he was right. I don't know any of these.
In 2014. This put it right at the tail end of the Clash of Clans craze and took strong inspiration from that game's core gameplay. In-game, players build and customize their base to their liking, while using troops to fight off enemies. On top of that, you can call in heroes
for Call of Duty
to help you on the battlefield, each coming with their own kill streaks, like Predator missiles or chopper gunners. Now, this game wasn't received very well at all and was sadly shut down in 2018, which honestly, it kind of sucks, because even if a game is bad, I still believe it should have a place on digital storefronts. So all those devs' hard work doesn't get thrown away. The next forgotten COD is Call of Duty Mobile. Okay, that's not the unknown game, but the next game is the reason we even have Call of Duty Mobile, and that's Call of Duty Online. This free-to-play game mashed elements from all the mainline Call of Duty games into one cohesive multiplayer experience, much like Call of Duty Mobile does now, except it wasn't limited to just phones. Are you ready for the catch? It was a Chinese exclusive. It first released in China back in 2015, and in the time before it shut down in 2021, it received constant updates and was played by tons of people across China. Now, there were a few ways to play it in North America if you knew your way around a VPN, but otherwise, this never saw a global release and is most likely the biggest inspiration for Call of Duty Mobile. This next COD falls perfectly into the middle of the Venn diagram of forgotten games and forgotten game consoles. I'm talking about the obscure Black Ops Declassified, which was released on something called the PS Vita back in 2012.
I remember this.
The game's story follows the new character Ryan Jackson, who is a CIA analyst conducting a report on Mason, Woods, and Hudson during their time between Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. This means that technically this game is canon to the overall Black Ops lore, although nothing too important really happens for it to actually matter in the long run. Gameplay-wise, missions are about as simple and boring as you would think for a game based around some guy filing a report. And when counting up all 10 operations, they only come out to be a total of 1 hour of playtime.
Wow.
Even for COD, that's short. But unlike a lot of handheld-only titles today, Declassified was more than just a single-player experience. It even included a 4v4 multiplayer.
No way.
This featured a full 40 levels of progression.
That's kind of crazy.
25 weapons pulled straight from BO1 and 6 unique maps, including their own versions of Nuketown titled Nuke House, which is just an even smaller version of the Black Ops classic. Now, game modes wise, they weren't offering anything too great either. It just had TDM, free-for-all, kill confirmed, and drop zone for some reason. You couldn't even play domination. Suffice to say, not many people were itching to play this game when it was the same year that BO2 was topping the charts. On top of that, it also featured its very own third mode named Hostiles, a new take on MW3's survival mode where you had to hold out against waves and waves of enemies. Meaning, this is technically the only Black Ops game to not feature zombies. Now, on top of being a game that many fans didn't even know existed, those who actually did buy and play through it absolutely hated it. The controls were clunky, the story missions were dull, and the whole thing was riddled with bugs and glitches.
I mean, if that thing's coming out when BO2 came out, like, no one's gonna play this, obviously. It's kind of crazy that they allowed that release to happen, to be honest.
In fact, the developers, Instigate Games, would later completely shut down a few months after the game was released to a staggering 33% on Metacritic. Say what you will about modern Call of Duty games, but at least none of them were so bad that an entire studio went bankrupt.
That is true.
Did you know that Call of Duty had not one, but two zombies games available on mobile devices? One was centered around World at War zombies, while the other was based on the original Black Ops. They're discontinued now, but gameplay can still be found online, showing us that they ran surprisingly well for mobile games from 2009. They didn't alter much from their console counterparts, just with stripped down graphics and disgusting touchscreen controls, meaning the best way to play these was most likely on the iPad, considering how large the screen was. Neither were free to play though, which meant not a ton of people made the plunge, and these COD Zombie spin-offs were mostly forgotten about, even within the hardcore zombies community. Now this is the big one. This is the Call of Duty.
I truly have only known like a couple of these, so I can't even imagine what this one is.
Game that I am positive none of you have heard of, unless you're from Australia. You heard me right. Call of Duty had its own exclusive mobile game in Australia entitled Call of Duty Siege.
What?
Now, not much can be found on this game, but here's what the title's description
Anyone
says.
in Australia?
Conquer the galaxy in Call of Duty Siege, the real-time strategy and collectible card game set in Call of Duty Infinite Warfare universe.
What?
Command your warship, the Retribution, to form offensive strike teams and reclaim planets from enemy factions that have seized power from the United Nations Space Alliance. The universe is under siege, and you're its last hope. Are you up for the challenge? So yeah, this game took place in Infinite Warfare universe, featuring characters like Nick Reyes, Ethan, and John Soap McTavish, and all planets like Earth, Mars, and Mercury. Like Call of Duty Heroes, the gameplay was top-down and mimicked Clash Royale by having troop cards you can add to a deck and deploy in a battle given certain points. It honestly sucks it never came to America, because just on the limited gameplay alone, I'm more sold on this than Call of Duty Heroes. So there you have it. These are just a few Call of Duty games that you may have forgotten about or never even heard of. If you want me to play some more forgotten Call of Duty games, leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Huh, he's right. Those were there were a lot of Call of Duties there I did not know existed. That's dude, the RTS one I think is the one that shocked me the most, to be honest. It's like Age of Empires meets Call of Duty. I didn't hear about it. It's crazy.